Hari Om. Chapter 17 is very much like chapter 14, where Bhagwan has talked about the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. All of us have it in some measure, and where does it come from? Bhagwan had said it is Swabhavaja, it is inherent in our Swabhava, and it comes from Prakriti. So can we never be free of it then? No, we can be, because only our mind, body and intellect part is part of Prakriti, but we actually are free. We don't remember this fact, and therefore we feel bound by the world, and then we react to the world in a Sattva, Rajas or Tamas way, and this interaction causes the bondage. Now, Bhagwan in this chapter 17th has said that everything that we choose to do, everything that we aspire to do, everything that we are attracted to, and our very demeanor and our the way we hold ourselves, the way we glance and look and speak, and even the food that we choose to eat, everything in us is actually reflecting our Sattva gun, Rajas gun or Tamas gun. And a person who is adept at understanding this guna can glean it from the very smallest gesture, the smallest glance, and the smallest the fewest words that we may speak. That person will be able to make out, is this person in Sattva, Rajas or Tamas? Sometimes we are in different modes, but predominantly. If everything about us is reflecting our Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, that means, do we have the choice to be in Sattva more and more? Well, let's see, as Krishna guides Arjuna ahead, saying that what you choose to be is what you will become, and what you choose to think is what you will become. So in 17th chapter, 8th, 9th and 10th verses, Bhagwan had said even the food that you choose can be sattvic food or tamasic food, putrid or stale or over fried or very hot and chilly, and creating first of all disturbance in the body and that burning and acidity, but we are very fond of it, so that's also rajasic. And coffee and alcohol and tea and beverages of the kind, intoxicants, all that comes under tamasic. What do we choose to and what do we really enjoy is also reflecting our self, because it is already mentioned in Chandogya Upanishad that Annamayam hi Saumya Manaha. The kind of food we ingest is the kind of mind that we will develop. See how subtle it is? And Ayurveda and our scriptures have repeatedly pointed this out, saying that look, food is not just a gross thing for the gross body. It is affecting the very quality of the mind and emotions. And our scriptures and Ayurveda screams this from the rooftops, but very few of us care to listen, because we are attracted by the fast food trends and from about the Western world, which is already regretting its choice of food because of rampant obesity and all that the Western world is suffering from. I don't need to go into that. But Ayurveda and our scriptures have said, Annamayam hi Saumya Manaha. The quality of food is going to change the quality of mood or swabhav and even your man. This is proclaimed by the rishis who have been for years and years in tapas to know the truths about something or other. And now in the 17th chapter, verses 11, 12 and 13th talked about even karma. Our actions, our karma can also be sattvic, rajasic and tamasic. That's not difficult to understand, because when we are doing things selflessly, without swarth interfering, our swarth is so pushy that sometimes we are overtaken by it. Swarth, when we do things selflessly, it is sattvic karma. Any karma actually, any karma. The kind of karma is not defined at all by either Krishna or in any other scripture. How does it matter? We may be cleaning the courtyard of a temple, or we may be leading one of the multinational companies as a CEO, the chief executive officer. It doesn't matter. the kind of work we are doing, but the manner in which we are doing it. If we are doing it selflessly, sattvic. If we are doing it with a very strong desire for success and for man and badhai and my fame, and I should be able to do it in this way, then it is of course rajasic. And what is tamasic? Karma. You mean to say tamasic karma is also possible? Yes. There are people who even evade their responsibilities. They try to avoid it. They try to push it on to other people. Okay, you can do it. I'm not in the mood to do it this time. They make excuses, procrastination, and this kind of negligence is called tamasic action. So, the recent reports about why what's his name, Mr. Mistry had to leave Tata company, and the reasons were very strong. It's because he had taken some decisions which were actually promoting his own profit. His own meaning, okay, in some way his own profit, because he belonged to another company, Shapurji Palanji, and also because he wanted only profit. And the very values on which for 150 years the Tata company and the Tata name has survived is that whether it is loss or gain, but they are going to stick to their word. If they have made a contract, if they have made a promise, they will jolly well keep it. And the world over, 150 years, people know this is the reputation of Tatas. When this was at stake, which means that Mr. Mistry had gone a little rajasic in his desire for maybe success or fame or wealth, and there were points where he was breaking contracts for profit. Tata said, no, we may go into losses, but we will keep our word. That is the sattvic way of functioning. And therefore there was a clash between Mistry and Tatas. Cyrus Mistry and Ratan Tata. The clash will occur between Rajas and Tamas because they are based on different values. The value systems are different. And therefore, if we are working in the same company, and suppose we are working towards a common goal, then God forbid, if we are working with different values, then this kind of clash is bound to occur. And therefore, we see a lot of friction in the world, and a lot of animosity and a lot of hatred. Why does it occur? Because there are clashes of values. Now, Bhagavan is saying you can develop sattvic values and once they become part of you, it becomes so hard to shake it off. It's like saying you can cut off my arm, but you're not going to take my values away. It's that kind of steadfastness which you see in the Tata company and in those who lead the company. And that how does it come? It comes with a thought which then becomes an action, which then becomes repeated action, becomes habit, repeated habit becomes swabhava, and that swabhava drives the very character and destiny of the person. And that person is actually driving the company. And therefore the company holds the same kind of character and stature as the Tatas themselves. Of course, the company is an inanimate thing, but it holds that kind of character. Why? Because it's led by people of the highest sattvic values. Bhagavan is saying, what are these values? So he goes on to say in chapter 17, verse number 14, 1-4. Deva Dvija Guru Pragya Pujanam Shauchamarjavam. Dvij is a person who is born twice. How can we be born twice? Well, this is a word that occurs in our scriptures. Nowhere else in the world will you find this word. Not in any literature, not in any scripture of the world. Dvija, born twice simply means that we are born once when our physical body is born. Of course, that is the first one. We are born once again when we have realized that, oh, I am not just this body, I am an Atma and I am permanent and not this Nashwar body. That highest realization, not intellectually, not through reading, not in words or in listening. Right now we are only listening, but you know that realization dawns upon some people who become realized souls. That's when they say that person is born Again, Dvija. So these Dvij people who are twice born, Krishna is telling Arjun, they are the ones who Guru Pragya Pujanam. They worship the Guru, the Acharya and the wise people. But here by worship we don't mean doing puja, archana and slavery. It is like saying they draw inspiration from the words of the Pragya or the Guru. Pragya means the wise people, Guru is or Acharya is the ones who are teaching. Draw inspiration to such an extent that their life begins to transform, and that is the greatest gift to the Guru or the Acharya or to the wise people. So this worship that we are talking about, pujanam, not to be taken at face value. It is a kind of in the olden days, of course, the Acharya, the Guru was also looked after in terms of his worldly needs, which means the ashram was tended and the kitchen and the cleaning and the goshala and the cow and the cows, everything was looked after by the shishyas, by the disciples. Those were also physical needs which they looked after. Now, when we take inspiration, it's a kind of pujanam of the wise, of the acharyas, of the gurus. Now, if I were to just create, if I took this word pujanam in the first line at face value, I might as well create a statue of Shankaracharya. He is the greatest guru. He has written so many commentaries from which we are learning and speaking now. Or Chinmayaji, I can make an idol out of him. Or Vedvyasji. And I may offer flowers and fruit and agarbatti every morning. But will that kind of puja lead me to gain any spiritual growth? Obviously no. So this pujanam simply means we take inspiration, we learn in the sincerest, most ardent way, we learn what we can from about the scriptures, from the wise and the acharya and the guru. Who is this we? We here is the people who are of a sattvic mode of mind. Because there are millions and millions of people, and the opportunity to hear and listen, the access to the scriptures is plentiful. But even while hearing, we may be listening only half-heartedly, or we may not even transform even if we listen, because our mind is somewhere else and our priorities are somewhere else, let's say, and our attention is somewhere else. So this kind of listening, and some others who even avoid listening, saying that it's not for us. So there are tamasic and there are rajasic, but Bhagwan is saying the sattvic are the ones who will listen to the wise and to the guru and do pujanam, which means be inspired to change their lifestyle. Now what is this lifestyle which is sattvic? So Bhagwan explains in the second phrase of the first line, Shaucham Arjavam, Pujanam Shaucham Arjavam. Shaucham, of course, we know. It means cleanliness. You know the Ashtanga Yoga, which is a huge treatise by Patanjali, Maharishi Patanjali. Ashtanga Yoga has been, in that he has elaborated some of these words of Krishna, and he has created an entire, let's say, a blueprint of change, from changing our lifestyle to our man, to our buddhi, to our dhyan, right up to samadhi. That's why in Ashtanga Yoga you find yam, niyam, asanam, pranayam, pratyahara, dharanam, dhyan and samadhi. It's a very exciting piece of literature, actually, also part of our scriptures, Patanjali Yoga. Now, that is just an elaboration of what Krishna mentions here, Shaucham. It is simply a lifestyle change. Of course, it means that we are not going to, outer sanitation we need not even talk about. Although some of the rishis whom I have been reading, they say that outer sanitation, no matter how much you do, of course we must keep our bodies clean, but it is like cleaning a clay model. So the moment you keep washing and washing that clay model or that clay pot, and you keep washing it, and in the end it's just clay, it's just mud. So mud will just keep getting washed down, and that's all it is. So the body actually is just dust. But still, for living in society, we have to keep it very, very clean. Now, what about emotional hygiene? When he says shaucham, a sattvic mind has to have emotional hygiene. You know, we keep our bungalows clean. I was reading a post the other day. We keep our bungalows clean, our verandas and our homes and our ceilings. The cobwebs shouldn't be there. Our garages and our terraces and everything is spick and span and beautifully. And the pots, the flower pots are nicely painted. Not a thing out of place. But that's not where we live. We live in our minds. It is our mind we carry day in and day out, and even when I'm sitting on my very spotlessly clean terrace, it's not the terrace I'm living on. Yes, my body is there. It's the mind I'm living in. So then the mind has to be that spotlessly clean, isn't it? But unfortunately, not always so. What happens to the mind? Oh, there are worries which are piling up in the corner, and there are some emotional upsets which are stinking, which are, peeping out of, which are stuffed into the wardrobes. And there are some complexes which I have about other people gaining more than I have, some envy which is hanging like cobwebs in the ceiling of my mind. And there are, of course, some secrets I have in my life which I can't share with anyone. So they are brushed under the carpet. That's the quality of my mind. So there is comparison, worries, and there are so many regrets, so many expectations from family members and from dear friends or from colleagues. These expectations are actually just stuffed here and there, lying littered here and there. What kind of a clean house is it? I'm living in that house, which is the mind, and I have littered it with expectations and worries and complaints. Yes, complaints about this or that. And there are so many grudges that I hold against someone who has done me wrong and has not returned a favor, or who has not stood by me in my difficult hour when I have gone out of my way and given a helping hand, or done more than my share for that person, and not a single word of gratitude or return favor. Oh my God, that grudge plays in my mind over and over and over again, and it is that grudge which is stinking in the corner of the room. It is going putrid and stinking in the corner. Is that the quality of the mind? Well, so these bungalows and the spick and span and the vacuumed carpets and the beautiful upholstery makes no difference. That's not where I live. I live in the mind, and therefore Bhagavan is saying shaucham. A sattvic mind first of all has to pay attention to shaucham. Get rid of the expectations and the complaints and the grudges, because that's what is causing it's putrefying the mind. And definitely, if things were piled up like that and littered everywhere and cobwebs hanging and some old potatoes, vegetables stinking in the corner, I wouldn't be able to live in that room. I would be upset. But in my mind, I allow all that. Why? Because I have allowed the mind to make it a habit. The mind has become my master, and I have allowed it to do that. Now, whenever we give attention to wrong things like worries and grudges and expectations, and whenever I give too much attention for too long a period of time to wrong things, what happens to the quality of my mind? My mind becomes too blunt or rough or gross to handle very, very subtle things like reading the scriptures, understanding the words of Krishna, and the ability to meditate. All this needs subtlety. But the constant cyclical churning in my mind about this or that of sansar has blunted the ability of dhyan and tapa and swadhyay in my mind. The ability has been blunted. So Bhagavan says, watch out. A sattvic person is also arjavam, the last word in the first line. Arjavam meaning straightforward and simple. This word has come before because these are repeated concepts. Now, when there is an akkad in the mind, when there is an akkad about anything, the garva, the pride about anything, the first casualty is our simplicity of our nature, aswabhav. Because that akkad is taking away the simplicity and siddhapan of our nature. So why have an akkad? The dambha, the ahankar, and everyone is in the same race. कि आपको इस चीज का दम है, चलो मैं भी दिखाता हूँ. And then it goes on and on, people hoarding and showing and ostentation and exhibitionism. It goes on in certain circles, or maybe in a small way, it goes on with everyone. Now, when my speech comes out of dambh and ahankar and garv and akad, I've lost the simplicity of speech also, because my words will then come out of ahankar, of dambh, of an attitude. So my speech will be affected. Therefore, everything is linked. One swabhava, and it shows in every action or speech or thought. And now, Bhagavan has said in the 5th verse of this chapter, Dambhankara samyuktaha kamaraga balanvitaha. When we start thinking that we are the center of things, it seems to give us some kind of power, balanvitaha, some kind of power. Over what? Over other poor creatures who are also struggling to show that they are better than somebody else. It's a very pitiable race to be in. And when we think that we are the center of things, things should go my way, and people should even think my way, they go to that extent, then what we are actually saying is that, look, this sansar script is mine. And in this script, I am the center, and everyone else who comes into this script jolly well play my script, my dialogues, my direction. Is that possible? I mean, that's an unrealistic expectation which leads to hurt and disaster on both sides. To people who come into our lives, and of course we end up in disappointment. The thing is, we start saying that other people should be playing my script. How come they're doing things differently from the way I like it? That happens to people of ahankar, and therefore Bhagavan says, no, that is not a sattvic way to live. How can you reach the highest, Arjun? When you want to reach the highest, you need a subtle mind, a simple mind, arjavam. And when you give up everything and your ahankar, only then you can merge with something else. So as long as the salt doll was thinking that she is an entity by herself, and unique and different and beautiful, and she had the dambha and ahankar to say, where's the ocean? Let me find out what is the depth of this ocean that you rishis keep talking about. And she jumped into the ocean. Only when she gave up her identity as a salt doll made out of salt, only then did she merge with the ocean. Otherwise it's not possible. हमारे दम्भ और अहंकार को लेके हम भगवान के द्वार पर बैठेंगे, and we will say, Bhagwan, please accept me. Bhagwan will say, okay, leave your ahankar at the doorstep outside. Only then I can accept you. Otherwise this merging is not possible. Okay. So what is the tip here? The tip is that we will start treating people better, much better, when we start disclaiming our expectations from them. You will find that our attitude to them changes. We will treat them much better. Bhagavan goes on to say some more sattvic qualities that Arjun may like to develop in case he is looking for that Brahma Satya, not looking for success or failure in the battle, not looking for even freedom from sorrow of killing his own kith and kin. No, I'm not looking for freedom from sorrow. Bhagavan is saying, leave all these small problems behind. I'm giving you Brahma Satya. But for that, the steps are small and you have to climb the steps. The second one is, in the second line, Brahmacharya. Now, Brahmacharya, most of us understand as celibacy, but here it also means, apart from celibacy, of course, and self-restraint, because you can't be a Brahmacharya if you're Grihastha and a family person. It also means self-restraint. But mainly it means the one who walks the path of Brahma or truth. And how can we do that? When our attention is on self-growth and swadhyay and self-awareness. Where am I going? Is this my goal? Am I reacting to things? When I am paying attention to self-awareness, that is Brahmacharya. And taking away my attention from the attractions and pleasures of the world. That's a Brahmacharya. That's a sattvic way to live. Next word is, before we go to the next word, Brahmacharya, talking about attractions of the world, many of us, we believe that in order to bring happiness to our children and grandchildren, we must indulge them, indulge their senses, and make them thrilled about experiencing something outside, a new place or a new film or some new food. And whenever they get this thrill, they grow up thinking, and we also probably grew up thinking, that the real thrill of the world is all outside. Sorry. So the wrong notion has been transferred to the children that the thrills of the world is the true pursuit of happiness. But if you see, in the olden days, the mothers and the grandmothers would sit their children by their side and say, okay, let me tell you a story. Until the children began to get thrilled with the stories themselves. What was this thrill? This was at the subtle level of imagination, of animals and characters in the stories. And each of these characters would play out their sattva, rajas or tamas guna. You know, some were cruel and some were very selfless and giving. And so the children who were listening to this, they were probably inspired. You cannot help but be inspired by the sattva guna of some of the selfless characters in these imaginary stories. So by these stories, the parents and grandparents were also thrilling them. They were getting thrilled, but in the subtle world, not in the gross world of food and travel and clothes and shoes and something exciting to do outside. And now what else to do? So then children very soon learn to say, okay, I've experienced this and that. Now I am bored. I am bored was not in our dictionary when we were growing up, because there's so much to explore on our own. And of course there were these, and those children who have discovered the thrill of reading and of books, they cannot be bored at all, because they have gone into the subtle world from the thrills and excitements and attractions and pleasures of the gross world. Which is not to say that we don't give them what they want, but we have to also learn to say no. Too much of anything, we can say no. What about ahimsa? Sattvic people are also ahimsak. So we say, no, we don't do violence, of course not. But then when there is some kind of imaginary hurt, that someone has spoken badly and or insulted me, I hold a grudge against that person. That grudge itself is a hinsa, right? Because it's in seed form, and anytime I may burst out or be angry or blurt out or not stand by in times of need, because then I feel justified. Okay, I'm doing it just to square up with them. Holding the grudge is also a kind of violence, holding violence in the seed form. So when there is an imaginary hurt or a real hurt, why give attention to it? Just drop it. And also the likes and dislikes of the mind. I like this, I don't like that. That creates violence. What about envy? Envy is the greatest form of violence. Because in envy we say, what that other person has, I want. Without putting in their sacrifices and the effort that person has done. No, I don't know what they have done, but I want what they have. That is a kind of violence. It's a kind of deceit. And the second thing that happens in envy, which is worse, in envy, what happens is, the person says, not only do I want what you have, but I'm not happy that you have it. And I'm not sharing your happiness. And therefore, not sharing the happiness, not enjoying somebody else's happiness is a kind of violence, is a kind of hatred. It's a kind of distasteful behavior. So Bhagavan is saying a sattvic person will first of all be ahimsak, will have no hinsa, no grudges, no envy. And so when we say violence, let's not take it at the gross level of fighting with arms with people or having a physical fight. No, we are not talking at gross level at all. We don't know how many seeds of violence we hold in our daily interactions with people. Now we have to guard against it and guard our children against it. What about when I do some things in the sansar only because my swartha or my agenda is fulfilled? What I need, what I want for myself is fulfilled, and therefore I take that action. If I'm doing things only for my swarth also extends to my immediate family or my community or people of my religion or language or nation. It may grow wider and wider, the circle, but it is still associated with the mera swarth. And if I do things only with my swarth in mind, it is a kind of violence. It is hinsa. Because then I'm ready to backstab people, deprive them of what they want because I want it first. So when I want to deprive somebody of something, it's a kind of violence. I will not do it. Why should I do it for the neighbor? That this river flows through my state. Why should I share the waters of my state with another state? Well, there are farmers dying there too, and they need their parched land also needs water. So we don't have a grander humanistic view of things. It's just swarth, some of us, and that is violence. Every time we see a dispute about, when it comes to a dispute, we can see the hinsa. That's the sad part. When we see the disputes coming out onto the streets, and the disputes may be related to language or religion or sharing the waters, as I said, or it could be something so jati and kul, God knows what all they have disputes about. But when these things were actually, these ideas were prospering in the colleges and universities and in the minds of the youth, what were we doing then? That was the seed of violence. It just spilled out onto the streets, and then we saw it as violence. But the seed was sown. The moment we sowed the seeds of divisiveness in our own education, in our own homes, with our own children and people around us, when we talked of divisiveness or difference, hum ye or wo, hum aisa nahi karte, wo aisa karte hain, hum or wo, that division itself becomes a form of violence. Now, Bhagavan says, Shariram tapa uchyate. The moment we practice shaucham, that is cleanliness of the mind, shaucham and body of course, arjavam, simplicity of character, of behavior, brahmacharya, self-restraint, ahimsa, non-violence in the very seed form, in the thought form, then it is called the Shariram tapa uchyate, the highest, uchyate, highest form of tapa, highest form of endeavor towards the highest, Shariram. So this is the definition. Now, is there a word kashta over here? That's there in the... Okay, some people give a lot of kashta to the body and say that, I'm working so hard and I'm doing this or that, but giving mere kashta to the body or doing hard penance and torturing the body is not tapa. Tapa is only when we are making great efforts for some highest truth. So taking this great pains, this is called Sharinam Tapa Uchyate, is called the discipline, highest discipline of the body. So far we have seen Pragya Pujanam, the wise should be respected for their ideas, for bringing their ideas to us, for Shaucham, Arjavam, Brahmacharya, Ahimsa. And tap also means that in very, very, very hard and difficult times and very trying times, we show forbearance, titiksha. That forbearance itself is a kind of tap. Hard times will come, tragic news will come, bad things do happen. That forbearance, if we can stand through the storm with forbearance, that is a kind of tapa. Now, tap of speech. Now, if we have tapa of mind and lifestyle, as in Arjavam and Shaucham and Ahimsa and Brahmacharya, then naturally it will reflect in our speech. It's natural. It's not as if my speech has to be cultivated differently. Although some people do it. That Bhagavan calls it Rajasic. Do what? They cultivate a kind of speech to be excessively polite and excessively respectful and excessively obsequious. No. Bhagavan says your motive is not hidden. We'll come to that. First, let's see what is the tapas of speech. Tapas meaning speech is also of three kinds. Sattvic, Rajasic and Tamasic. So verse number 15. Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayata. Anudvega. Anudvega is a word which has come before in the Gita. Words or actions that cause no udvega, no agitation or excitement or hurt to other people. Vakyam, our speech, our vakya has to be such. Satyam, priyam, hitam. Satyam vada, priyam vada, hitam vada is an injunction of the scriptures all over the place. Speak the truth. And if it's harsh and the truth has to be spoken, then let that truth be spoken in the gentlest possible way, in the most caring and compassionate way, because sometimes truth can be harsh, but speak the truth. And priyam vada, say it gently. Hitam vada, say it in a way that it's aimed at the welfare of the listener. Chayata, this is the tapa of speech. Simple. This is the practice of sattvic speech. Now when he says anudvegakaram vakyam, which means don't use words that cause agitation in others, what are the kinds of, what kind of speech causes disturbance in others? Well, it's not difficult for us to figure out, because we only have to think what are the kinds of words that others have spoken that have disturbed us. Exactly the same thing in our speech will disturb the others. What are these things? How do words disturb us? Well, first of all, because sometimes we use words which are constantly bitter. They have a tone of bitterness about this or that. And maybe they're bitter about some other issue, and it spills over into all other discussions. So people carry this tang of bitterness in all their words. It disturbs the listener, and it may do it subliminally, which means subconsciously, although the person may not react immediately, but it affects them. It affects everyone the moment we carry bitterness in our words. Secondly, when we are sarcastic. Sarcasm is a form of violence. Unless it's with a close friend and you know it is not going to hurt and it's done in good humor, okay, it's a safe place to be sarcastic. But by and large, sarcasm is one of the harshest, most violent forms of speech that I have seen. And we can avoid it. Why do we have to use it? What about the next one? Gossip. Gossip is also very, very harmful. It's like peeking into the personal life of somebody else. Why do we need to do that? It's not very cultured. Peeking into somebody's personal life. And if somebody else is gossiping, as I have said before, we can very politely excuse ourselves, because we never know when our mind is going to slip into that mode of listening and enjoying and relishing the gossip about other people, and then we may not realize it. Self-awareness, even before self-awareness comes, just pull away. Gossip is uncivilized. It's not required. Slander. Why slander? This is a form of violence. When people have not done things and we say bad things about them, or even if they have done it, why do we defame them? Or why do others defame us? Both ways it's violence actually. Slander is violence. And also the next one, condescending speech. When we look down upon people and we have this very supercilious, condescending way of speaking, that is a form of violence. It's not a sattvic way of speaking, simply put. According to Krishna, it's not sattvic. And of course, the last one, jalpa. Jalpa it means bakwas. So sometimes we just end up not slandering, not gossiping, not in bitterness, not complaining, but yes, we end up coming back home or over the phone, and we put down the phone and say, kya baat ki? Khali bakwas kiya. Bakwas means things that have which are pointless. I don't know what these things are. Maybe we all do it, but we have to watch out. So jalpa, and of course there's one more, which is a violent and a non-sattvic way of speaking, and that is carrying tales. Chugli jisko kehte hain na. So bakwas, chugli and gossip, all this is uncivilized, uncouth, not a sattvic way of using our speech, words. Words should come out from the depths of truth, of compassion, of hitam, priyam, satyam. Otherwise, words are not even necessary. You know, some people around us who are very, very quiet because they don't feel the need to disturb the air around them with unnecessary words, which are not the truth, or which don't have the hita, that is the welfare of others in mind, or which are not showing particular compassion. So why use the word? So they're very quiet. And when we have to speak, of course, when we have to speak, can we make sure that the words are not causing anudveg, means not causing disturbance, but they are shant. The words themselves are shant and compassionate and saral, simple. Keep it simple, not causing excitement. So when they say sattvic speech, it doesn't mean that we torture ourselves with mourn, that I'm going on a mourn vrat and now I'm not going to speak at all. It doesn't help people who have a very violent mind, and then all that violence goes on trapped in the mind. So it doesn't really help. That kind of mourn and torture is not being talked about. We are only saying Satyam Vada, Hitam Vada, Priyam Vada. Krishna is saying to Arjun. Arjun, you want to be sattvic first. You want to get away from the gross world so that your concerns and your sorrows and your questions to me, that is to Krishna, are not of the gross world. You have to make yourself sattvic with these small lifestyle changes. And these are disciplines, lifestyle disciplines. So then Bhagwan goes on to say in verse number 16, now he says, I'm going to ask you to be very, very sattvic in your mind, in your thinking. Manah prasada somyatvam maunamatma vinigraha bhava samshuddhirityettam prityeta tapo manasa muchyate. Oh, I didn't read the second line of verse 15. I'll just go back to verse 15. Anudvegakaram vakyam satyam priyahitam chayata swadhyayabhyasanam chaiva vangmayam tapa uchyate. Swadhyayabhyasanam. Use your time for swadhyaya. Now, swadhyaya doesn't mean only, yes, of course, it means reading the scriptures or some highest truth or the holy books of any religion, it doesn't matter. But when you read the scriptures, it is swadhyaya, self-reading and self-understanding. But swadhyaya also means knowing the self through introspection, through self-awareness. And therefore, Swadhyaya has a wider meaning of learning about my true self. So, contemplation and self-awareness, I would also put under Swadhyaya as a sattvic activity and not just the reading of the scriptures. Anyway, when we read the scriptures, the natural corollary is that we have to do Shravan and then Mananam. Anyway, we have to go into Mananam in order to transform. So, they are connected, Swadhyaya. Reading or listening and contemplation. Vakyamaya tapauchyate, austerity of speech. This is how we can cultivate. Now, verse number 16. Mana prasada somyatvam maunamatma vinigraha. Mana prasada. Mana prasada means cultivate the austerity of the mind in such a way that the man remains prasanna chitta. Prasanna. And that happiness, that glow of happiness, we are then capable of passing on to others, even to strangers on a bus or a train or a plane. You will realize that it has a vibration, just like all the other moods. When you're bitter or angry or very upset, you will see people will stay away from you, because even when you don't utter a word, the vibration passes on, and people don't wish to be affected by bad vibrations or negative vibrations. So, Mana prasada, prasanna chit raho, prasanna man raho. See how you can affect yourself and the lives of others. Mana prasada. This mana prasannata is also called here by Krishna as mana prasad. What a beautiful word. Mana prasad. So, do I become prasanna when I buy a new piece of upholstery or new shoes or a new car or something? Yes, of course I become prasanna. I can't deny that. It would be unnatural. But I am prasanna with something in the gross world. So my prasannata is also gross, of a gross kind. We should just realize that and leave it over there without any guilt trip. So prasannata of the gross. But when I have the prasannata of learning something higher, of hearing some highest truth, of the subtlest kind, and that has fired my imagination, and the mind is thrilled by the ideas and the concepts and by the words of the rishis, of Krishna. That kind of thrill and prasannata is of a very subtle kind. It's of a different kind. So which one do we need? And then that prasannata is a kind of serenity. A kind of serenity spreads over such a person. Now, what kind of person, what is that serenity? Who is the one who is really serene? A, one who is interacting with the world but without expectations and wanting. मुझे ये भी चाहिए, उनसे वो भी चाहिए, और इस परिस्थिति और इस घटना से ये भी चाहिए. Without wanting an expectation, when I interact with the world, I automatically gain serenity in that interaction. And who else is a serene person? The one who has found some higher ideal, some higher idea, some higher goal, and says, okay, I'm not going to be disturbed by these this and that in the sansar. वो तो आता जाता रहता है, सब आनी जानी चीज है. I may be disturbed or taken aback or shocked or surprised by so many things. Everything comes unannounced, especially unpleasant things. But I'm not going to let that surprise or shock hold me for long. I'm going to move on. So make your mind such, Swami Abhedanand ji used to say, make your mind such that it is like a mirror. In front of the mirror there are images coming and then passing on, coming and then passing on. But when that image passes on, the mirror doesn't hold that image and say कि वो ऐसा आकार का था, वो ऐसा था. It is clean again. The mirror becomes itself again, Swayam. But we act like, not like mirrors, but like cameras. एक इमेज आई सामने, ऐसी घटना हो गई, उन्होंने ये कह दिया, this was the incident that happened, and click, my mind has clicked, and the camera is now holding the image for a long, long time. So don't be a camera, he used to say, be a mirror. Yes, images will come, things and paristhiti and incidents will happen. Let them pass on. When they pass on and their time has come, they will. But don't hold on. So that kind of person is serene. Man prasadaha, man prasannaha. Maunam matma vinigraha, the one who is silent. Silent in the mind, not just in words. That silence of the mind comes from contemplation. When I want to think about the highest, then I cannot be bothered about the clutter of the world and the noise of the world. That silence comes from contemplation. And there is a kind of prasannata or man prasad, in the words of Krishna, in that contemplation. So he said maunam. And so serene is what kind of a person? A serene person? Atma vinigraha. Last word in the first line. The one who has enough self-restraint to stick to the highway of the highest and not get distracted and derailed by the side lanes. You know how often we get derailed. Someone has said something, I fly off into a temper. Someone has not done what I expected and what was expected even by highest values. So the person acts in very low values, so-called. And I am upset for a very long time. That means I have derailed my mind because of the actions of somebody else. And that person is acting according to his own sanskar and swabhav and guna, which is not even in his control, leave alone in our control. But I am holding on to their actions. And that is called derailment from my own goal or highway. If I say I have to move on the sattvic and keep my mind clean and clear or uncluttered of the cobwebs and all the old stink of all the old grudges, my mind is where I live. It has to be a temple. I can't pray or do dhyan or be sattvic or meditate in a place which is so cluttered. I need a temple. My mind has to be that temple. So a serene mind, mana prasada, is the one who cultivates a good-heartedness. Somyatvam. Good-heartedness is the word used by Bhagwan. He will naturally be Somyatvam or Somya. Now, मन प्रसाद जो है ना हमारा, वो increase कैसे करें उसको? How can I increase it? 1 or 2 tips, of course, some of the Swamis have given. Let things pass on. Be a mirror. Don't hold on to images. And don't interact with anything in the world with anything or anyone with an expectation or wanting. Simple tip. And the third thing is that whenever we are interacting in the world of Vastu, Vyakti, Paristiti, Ghatna, that is all around us, because we have to live in Sansar, then keep Rag and Dvesh away. I like, I dislike. I hate this, I love that. Extremes, keep it aside. It has no value. It only increases our Asuri Pravritti. The third tip, when we are doing any action in the world or any interaction with people, just watch out. Am I doing it for my own swartha or for my abhiman? If so, then keep the swartha and abhiman aside. God has no need for our swartha and abhiman. It is of our own making. And we hold on to it as if it is very dear to us. Mera abhiman, mera samman, mera status, meri pride. And I like to talk about my achievements and hold on to that is dambha, hypocrisy. Bhagwan says, I have no need for it. Come to me without all that. And therefore, that's one tip to keep a man prasanna. Just shed the abhiman, yeah. There's so many things that people achieve. We have achieved it because of the good circumstances we had by luck. Now, the fourth tip is how to keep man prasanna is whenever we interact with anyone, are we making sure that, just like the tapa of speech, that my words come from the depths of compassion, daya, kshama, udarta, generosity and welfare, कि मैं तुम्हारे लिए क्या कर सकता हूँ. Can my words be of that kind? Rather than मैंने ये किया, मैंने वो किया, हमारे family ने ये किया, हमने वो किया. I mean, we are increasing our own dambha and darpa. That is pride and hypocrisy. By speaking so much with the I statement. The I statement becomes predominant in our conversations. Okay, some people put up with it, some people tolerate it. Most of them don't want to hear so much of it. But of course, they just suffer it. But what is the real damage? The real damage is to my sattvic nature. So, man prasada, sattvikta, I have to cultivate, and therefore keep this too many I statements out of our conversation, and keep the welfare of others when we are speaking, when we are acting. Keep the welfare of others. That will this make the other person feel good or better, my words. Now, so far what have we seen? We have seen the tap of the body and tap of the mind. Maun, Atman Vinigraha, self-restraint, silence, speak the truth, Satya, Swadhyay, self-study and self-awareness. And also we have seen this in the 13th chapter and in the 16th chapter. And Bhagwan will talk about it again in the 18th chapter. Why? In 13th chapter, Bhagwan had said, Acharyopasanam shaucham. Acharya ki upasana, shaucham, sthairyamatmana vinigraha, atma vinigraha, self-restraint. Once again it has come. This is 13th chapter, 7th verse. 16th chapter he had said, Krishna had said, Ahimsa satya makrodhaha, akrodhaha. For sattvic nature, be akrodhaha. Tyaga shantirapaishunam. Tyag, shanti, dispassion. All these have come before. Arjun has, like a teacher who has to, Krishna is like that teacher who has to repeat a concept over and over again, lest the student forgets its importance, and also wants to be there by the side of the student until it has sunk in and become integrated in the learning, in the concept of the learner. So these are concepts that have come before, and now in chapter 17 also. Therefore, what is the lesson we learn? Chapter 13 and 16 and 17 and now coming up in 18 too. It simply means one thing. It means only one thing, that the entire Gita has only one and one uddeshya, goal. And that is that when we study, adhyayan karte hain, when the one who studies the Gita has only their Jivan Kalyan in mind. हमारा और अर्जुन का और सब सुनने वालों का जीवन कल्याण हो जाए, बस यही एक ही उद्देश्य है भगवत गीता का. And therefore we find it repeated. Now, what is Arjun's question? He had said, I want to know about the battle and am I going to kill my kith and kin? Anyway, that was his kind of sorrow. We have other kinds of sorrows. But Bhagwan says that don't approach me with your questions of marriage, shadi, all our sansari problems. Bete ki shadi kab hogi? Beti ko job kab milega? So Bhagwan says the sansari success, marriage, promotions, and dhan and investments, don't come to me for all that. You want Brahma Gyan, I am there for you. For all other things, there are marriage bureaus, there are investment consultants, there are chartered accountants, there are doctors if you are ill. For all that, there are experts. Don't come to Krishna. Don't go to Bhagwan's door with your sansari problems. You're just wasting time. It's pointless. Brahma Gyan chahiye, then hold on to all your current problems and then come to me. I'll give you one short solution. One short solution of Krishna to everything is Brahma Gyan. Brahma Gyan is what? That every karma that I do is going to bring me certain results, and that result is going to bind me to sansar. So my karma is my bandhan and it's causing me janma bandhan. Why is this happening? Because we consider sansar as real. ये संसार की सत्ता हम समझ लेते हैं ना कि ये सत्य है संसार. So Bhagwan says, no, the moment you shed that, then when संसार सत्य नहीं तो फिर क्या सत्य है? हाँ, that's the question. ये पूछो, ये question पूछो कि संसार सत्य नहीं तो और फिर सत्य क्या है? Then you will come to the highest truth. That consciousness, that universal entity, that energy that pulsates in you and in Brahma and everywhere. That satta, when you come to that Brahma Gyan is going to make all your other little problems of job and promotion and investment and dhan and sorrow and bereavement as little sansari bubbles. And they are bubbles. And therefore you will not approach. And therefore the one short solution to the entire gamut of problems that we collect is Brahma Gyan. Know that highest Brahma. Who is that? What is it? Brahma. Uska Gyan ho jaye, we are free from our sorrows. And then Bhagwan says, in the 17th verse, he goes on to say that आपके जो ये 3 गुण है ना, सत्व रजस तमस, यही सब कुछ करा रहे हैं तुमको जिंदगी में. और लेकिन when you learn to practice the austerity meaning सबको सात्विक बनाने की जब कोशिश करोगे in your lifestyle, which is sattvic speech, sattvic mind, sattvic thoughts, sattvic action, then he says, then what will happen? So verse number 17, Krishna says, Shraddhaya paraya taptam tapastatrividham naraihi aphalakankshibhir yuktaihi Satvikam parichakshate. These threefold austerities, austerity of the mind and body and speech, if you practice in a steadfast way, steadfast means Shraddhaya paraya taptam, with Shraddha, with constancy and consistency, then one more thing is needed. Even from this kind of tap, I'm practicing so much of tap, towards sattvic life, and then I expect a good result. Bhagwan says in the second line, no. Aphalakankshibhir yuktaihi. Don't do it with expectation of a phal. That has become part of our nature कि मुझे मैं ये करूँगा, मैं गीता पढ़ूँगा तो क्या होगा? What's in it for me? नहीं. Bhagwan says, aphalakankshibhir yuktaha. You will find the transformation. You will find, just stick to the path the way I tell you, says Krishna. And Arjun, you will come to me one day. Just believe that. Shraddhaya paraya taptam. Believe it and you will be there. Don't ask what will I get out of it. What's in it for me? that is aphalakankshibhiryuktaihi, then satvikam parichakshate. That is called a sattvic way to live, desiring no fruit. So don't have an anxiety all the time for result कि ये इसका result क्या होगा. Our anxiety for results is causing all the problems. Now Bhagavan says in verse number 18, all your actions again are sattvic, rajasic, tamasic. So let's see who are the ones. Now we have seen the sattvic kind of people. Now can we see the actions and speech of the rajasic kind? Then that is verse number 18. Satkaramana pujartham tapodhambhena chaivayat kriyate tadiha proktam rajasam chalamadhruvam. सत्कार, मान और पूजा, मेरी पूजा करें, मेरा मान करें, मेरा सम्मान करें, मेरा सत्कार करें, इसीलिए मैं अच्छे कर्म करूंगा. अरे, what kind of hypocrisy is this? Bhagavan is saying, you can't have this kind of a motive. Even if you are doing good things, yeah, fine. But if your motive is wrong, then it will fall into the category of rajasic. So some people do this कि लोग मुझे बहुत ही सत्यवादी समझे और सज्जन समझे और संयमी, सेल्फ रिस्ट्रेन, सेल्फ कंट्रोल्ड, वेरी रिलीजियस, वेरी पायस मुझे समझे. सो दे गो इनटू ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ वेरी शोई एक्टिविटीज. They could be of a semi-religious nature, they could be of a social nature, political nature, social service, it doesn't matter. If you're doing it with the motive कि मुझे सत्कार, मान, पूजार्थ, very first word in the first line, then he says it is neutralized because they are not going to reach that sattvic level. Satkara pujartham, pujartha tapah. Of what good is it? No, this kind of activity is only rajasic, Bhagavan says. Rajasam chalamad dhruvam. If the activity becomes rajasic, then naturally its phala will also be rajasic. And what kind of phal do we get in the rajasic activities? Chalam, unstable, and adhruvam, last word in the second line. Chalam means unstable. Adhruvam, transitory. The results will be transitory. एक दिन लोग मान करेंगे, बढ़ाई करेंगे, तालियां बजाएंगे, next day they'll forget about you. How does it matter? Rajasic world में, whatever we gain through all these artificial means, even the results are very, very transitory, superficial. And people will also give their superficial approval and applause, and they move on. So adhruvam, transitory, phal also, and action is also very transitory, unstable. So don't get into this. So दान, धर्म, ध्यान, तीर्थ, तप, जितना भी हम करते हैं, or maybe even sansari activities of job and family and social work and whatever we do, अगर हमने दिखावा के लिए किया, दंभ के लिए किया, that Bhagavan has used the word dambh, okay? It's in the first line, second phrase, tapo dambhena chaivayata, for hypocrisy, for ostentation, for exhibitionism. If they do it, then it's a kind of deceit. One of the acharyas was saying that even animals like satkar and samman and puja, by here we don't mean actual satkar, samman, puja, but they like to be treated well and courteously and sweetly and compassionately, and so we call it respectfully. Even animals like it, but they have an advantage. At least they don't become dambhi or hypocritical or arrogant about it. At least the animals. But animals also like satkar, man and samman. So what's so different about people? Bhagavan says no, don't do it for the purpose of people believing that you are such a person worthy of samman. No, if you are worthy, they will give you respect anyway. What about the dull-witted? The dull-witted people, what kind of actions do they do in the world? Rajasic do it for man, samman. The sattvic people do actions for the welfare of others selflessly. What about the tamasic? That we'll see next time. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Hari Om.